a deadly love triangle, an actor living up to his villainous role, and a sexual predator taken down by a documentary. They may have enjoyed stardom in the past, but these 90s stars all found out that they weren't above the law. Marion Suge Knight Jr.'s name remains synonymous with gangster rap in the 90s, as he spearheaded Death Row Records and released some of the greatest albums of the era, including Dr. Dre's The Chronic and Tupac's All Eyes on Me. However, Knight was never too far from controversy, finding himself in constant tussles with the law. From accusations that Knight involved himself in gang activities to questions surrounding his involvement in the killing of the notorious B.I.G., Knight became one of the most controversial figures in the rap scene. Yet, while he always seemed to slip away from the harshest punishment possible, it all came to a head eventually. In 2015, security footage captured Knight reversing his truck into rival Clee Bone Sloan, who worked on the film Straight Outta Compton. He then drove his vehicle straight into record label owner Terry Carter, who died from his injuries. 2 years later, Knight was indicted for sending death threats to Straight Outta Compton director F. Gary Gray. In 2018, though, the charges for the Gray incident were dropped in lieu of Knight's plea deal. He received a 28-year prison sentence, with 22 years being for voluntary manslaughter and the remaining 6 due to it being Knight's third strike. That 70s show turned into one of the most beloved sitcoms of the late 90s. In the series, Danny Masterson plays Stephen Hyde, who is presented as the chilled stoner of the friend circle, but never short of biting comments or pitch-perfect one-liners. That 70s show aired for 8 seasons, eventually receiving a revival in the form of 2023's That 90s Show. The revival follows the next generation of characters and brings back a few of the previous cast members. Masterson's Hyde, however, is nowhere to be found in this continuation because of the real-life actions of the actor.
And you'll be caught soon. I know you will.
I will.
In 2017, the Los Angeles Police Department investigated Masterson for sexual assault claims made by 3 women from incidents occurring in the early 2000s. In addition, there were proclamations made that the Church of Scientology, whom Masterson is a part of, attempted to bury the allegations against Masterson. In 2020, Masterson finally faced formal charges for the rape of 3 women. In the end, Masterson was sentenced to 30 years in prison, as he was found guilty of the rape of 2 women. Not too long after his sentencing, Bijou Phillips filed for divorce from Masterson, which proved to be a critical element in the court, denying his attorney's request for bail in 2024, as Masterson was considered to be a flight risk. In the mid-90s, Tammy Stych, aka Sunny, became a star attraction in the then WWF. Starting off as the manager for the Body Donners, Stych worked her way up to become a major personality in the professional wrestling company, while also crossing the pop culture divide. In fact, at the height of her popularity, she became the most downloaded woman in AOL history. In 2011, Stych was recognized for her achievements in the wrestling business by being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Outside of the squared circle, Stych found herself in trouble with the law, as she was arrested for driving under the influence on several occasions and even had her license suspended. In March 2022, Stych was arrested in Florida after the vehicle she was driving collided into another car, resulting in the death of 75-year-old Julian Lassiter. The authorities discovered both alcohol and traces of cannabis in her system at the time. In November 2023, Stych was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Reading a statement after her sentencing, State Attorney R.J. Larissa said, "The defendant's history of drinking and driving is horrendous. It was only a matter of time before her drunk driving killed an innocent and unsuspecting individual." When someone thinks of a quintessential 90s star, R. Kelly's name merits debate, as he produced hit songs like Bump and Grind and I Believe I Can Fly, which became anthems of the era. Even at the height of Kelly's fame, however, publications reported on accusations that the musician acted inappropriately with minors. In 2002, after years of rumors and murmurs, he was charged after videos depicting child sexual abuse surfaced. However, the charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. The scandal and controversy around Kelly refused to go away, as more reports and stories mounted against him. The 2019 documentary Surviving R. Kelly brought mainstream and notorious attention to Kelly, resulting in further investigations into him and the sexual abuse allegations. In 2022, Kelly was sentenced to 30 years in prison over racketeering and sex trafficking charges. A year later, another 20-year sentence was handed down to Kelly over his inappropriate behavior and possession of explicit material related to minors. The court, however, decided that Kelly should serve the sentences concurrently, culminating in only an extra year being added to his prison term. Kelly appealed one of the convictions, but it was upheld by the court. Joe's son made a name for himself in combat sports, competing in the UFC and kickboxing competitions. But his biggest claim to fame arrived in 1997's Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, as he portrays Random Task. While far from a leading role in a film, the character strikes a chord with viewers since it's an outstanding parody of James Bond's infamous bowler hat-wearing villain, Odd Job.
Oh, that really hurt!
Son was no newcomer to the world of acting though, as he had appeared in 90s action flicks such as Bad Blood and Blood Fist 5, Human Target, before Austin Powers. In 2008, Son was arrested for felony vandalism and received 60 days in jail. After a violation of his probation, he was sentenced to a further 90 days behind bars. As part of a deal, he needed to provide a DNA sample, which so happened to link him back to a crime that occurred on Christmas Eve in 1990. In 2011, Son was sentenced to 17 years and 4 months in prison, as he and an accomplice pleaded guilty to the rape and torture of an unnamed woman in 1990. In 2017, Son received another 27-year sentence for beating his cellmate Michael Graham to death. Despite appearing in the NFL and other football leagues across the late 80s and 90s, Eric Naposki's sporting achievements appear all but forgotten, as he's now remembered for being a part of a tragic love triangle that resulted in the murder of Bill McLaughlin, who was shot dead in his home in 1994. Prosecutors said that Naposki's girlfriend, Nanette Packard, who was engaged to McLaughlin at the time, encouraged Naposki to kill McLaughlin so that she could claim a lucrative life insurance policy. The case went unsolved for many years before both Packard and Naposki were found guilty and received life imprisonment without parole in 2012. Speaking to ABC News in 2021, Packard denied her involvement in McLaughlin's murder, adding that she had no clue who committed it either.
I don't know for sure. I never said that Eric did it because I couldn't say that Eric did it for sure. I don't know that.
It's fair to say that 1992 proved to be one of the most memorable of Amy Locane's acting career. Not only did she appear in School Ties, alongside the likes of Brendan Fraser, Matt Damon, and Ben Affleck, but she also received a regular role as Sandy Harling in the first season of Melrose Place. Locane's career didn't explode from there on out, but she continued to have a lingering presence in showbiz. In 2010, Locane attended a party to celebrate a theatre production that she had been a part of. An intoxicated Locane entered her vehicle and left the party that evening, culminating in her rear-ending a stopped Honda at a red light. When the driver approached Locane and noticed she had been drinking, she panicked and sped away. As the Honda driver followed her in hot pursuit, Locane's vehicle smashed into Fred and Helene Seaman's car as the couple turned from the road into their home. Fred required medical attention for his serious injuries. However, Helene died.
My addiction killed someone.
After the accident, it was discovered that Locane was 3 times the legal alcohol limit. In 2012, she received 3 years in prison for vehicular manslaughter. She was released on parole in 2015, but re-sentenced to 8 more years in 2019, as it was determined that her original sentence was too lenient. Due to the time she has already served, Locane is eligible for parole in December 2024. In the mid-90s, Corey Miller, better known as C Murder, entered the rap game as a member of the group True, along with his brother, Master P. As is common for most musicians in the scene, C Murder broke out on his own, dropping the highly acclaimed Life or Death album in 1998. He continued to perform and release music until 2 incidents in the early 2000s derailed his career. C Murder was found guilty of shooting and killing 16-year-old teenager Steve Thomas in 2002 after the pair argued at a nightclub. C Murder's conviction was overturned in 2003, but in 2009 he was sentenced to life imprisonment after a retrial. At the time, C Murder was already serving part of a 10-year sentence for 2 charges of attempted murder from an altogether different nightclub incident in 2001. In terms of the Thomas case, C Murder has maintained his innocence and tried to have his conviction overturned after 2 witnesses retracted their testimonies in 2018. Despite the attempts to get him free based on this development, a judge upheld the ruling. Football fans remember Dave Meggett for being a remarkable running back in the NFL for 10 seasons that spanned from 1989 to 1998. In his time as a professional football player, Meggett turned out for the New York Giants, New England Patriots, and the New York Jets. Meggett experienced several brushes with the law throughout his playing career. However, he never served any time for those arrests. In 1998, Meggett hit the headlines for all the wrong reasons after he was accused of assaulting a sex worker. The charge was dropped, though, after a jury failed to reach a verdict in 2000. Then, in 2007, Meggett received 2 years probation after he was sentenced for a misdemeanor of sexual battery involving an ex-girlfriend. These weren't the only incidents surrounding Meggett and sexual misconduct throughout the years, though, as other claims and concerns were brought forward about his behaviour. In 2010, Meggett finally went to prison, receiving a 30-year sentence after he was found guilty of criminal sexual conduct and burglary in an incident that involved a college student. As one of the most powerful film producers in Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein delivered hit after hit in the 90s, from Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction to the Academy Award-slaying Shakespeare in Love. Weinstein helped to create some of the decade's most memorable movies. Weinstein's reputation preceded him in Hollywood, as he was labeled a notoriously tough individual who was prone to anger and outbursts, as parodied by the character Harvey Weinstein in Entourage. In 2017, several reports broke about a darker side of Weinstein, accusing him of decades of misbehavior and abuse, including sexual harassment and sexual assault of a number of women. It kick-started a movement that became known as #MeToo, as people spoke up and out about the rife abuse in Hollywood and other industries, demanding a day of reckoning for their perpetrators. For Weinstein, the accusations led to investigations into the claims that resulted in him being arrested, then released on a $1 million bail in 2018. In 2020, Weinstein received a 23-year sentence for the sexual assault of 2 women. Then, in 2023, Weinstein received a further 16 years for a second conviction that stemmed from the sexual assault of a separate woman. In 2024, his first conviction was overturned. However, a retrial is set to take place. If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, contact the resource below, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website, or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP 4357.